Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. Today I'm taking a look at this, the AZ model HE162C Salamander in 1/72nd scale. So join me as I get inside this box and see what it's like. So starting off on the outside, we've got this, you know what, I actually really like this artwork. We've got this fictional HE162 in combat with a Soviet jet. And up here, top right hand corner, it says New Tool 2022. So this is pretty much what caught my eye about it. And I was like, oh, a relatively new tooling. I'd like to give that a go. I don't think I've ever tried an AZ model. So yeah, it will be interesting to see. It says up here we have super detailed plastic parts, decals for 3 versions and color instructions. Down here on the bottom we have an item code of 7827. So let's flip over onto the long thin edge and you can see here that we have some information in different languages. We're going to flip over to the other side, and on here we can see that one of the paint schemes is annotated and we have got some health and safety information in English to make sure that we don't harm ourselves. We have a contact address for AZ model, and you can see here they are based in the Czech Republic. The short thin edges have the same information which we have already seen on the front and sides. On the back, however, we've got our colour and marking guide. So you can see straight off when you are looking at this in the shop, we've got 3 different paint schemes and all of the colour callouts are down here at the bottom. They have just been given RLM colour numbers and also names, but no brand at the moment is annotated. So the first one is we've got a prototype aircraft which appears to be in an element of paint work on some of the parts, but it looks like the wings are made out of wood and the sort of front of the nose that hasn't yet been painted is sort of in its bare metal slash sort of primer colour. After that is we've got a fictional one which is in May 1945, and we have an even later fictional one from 1952. Personally, I think all of the paint schemes here look pretty fun, but I may be tempted to go for the middle one and use it as mottling practice, seeing as it's got some mottling on there. But we'll see what happens later in the day, and we will get stuck into the box and see what we have. So that's everything. I think you can tell maybe the box is a little too large. There is a bit of empty space, especially given that it is quite thin as well, and things could move around in the box, so it would only need, you could really do with a box half this height, just to make sure everything stays nice and safe. But let's have a look at the instructions first. We've got them right here. So it is printed in colour. We have some history of the actual HE162. This is an aircraft, a jet fighter. I believe they had some of the earlier variants sort of operational by the end of the Second World War, but this represents a slightly different variant which was only in a prototype stage. We do have more colour callouts down the bottom, and you can see that they've recommended Humbrol paint colours for this. We will open up, and it's just an A4 page, split into half, and we open it up. So on the left then we've got a sprue map, and it does indicate to us that there are some elements of this kit which will not be required for the variant we're doing. You can see that there are some different wing types which we don't need for our particular version. So there is a different variant that can be built out of this kit. We then start progressing through the build. The steps are a little bit small, but they are generally reasonably well written, and you are able to follow along with them. They're not overly cluttered each individual step. So we start off by assembling what appears to be part of the center console with the rudder pedals on it. Apparently there is a transfer to go on there. We have a seat that gets assembled, and that will have a decal as well, which looks like the seat belts. We then add that to the rear bulkhead, add some control panel elements with another decal there. And then we get onto our fuselage assembly. So these cockpit parts that we've already done get glued in, along with some other bits and pieces, and the air intake for the jet engine, which is on the top of the aircraft. We do have to add 10 grams of weight in the nose to prevent it from sitting on its tail. As we progress, you can see we've got elements of the landing gear bay being assembled here, and then we are in this step not doing a great deal, but we do have to join our tail surfaces to the rear of the aircraft and this sort of cowling at the front of the jet intake. So now we get to the bit about the wings. I presume that this is sort of a generic instruction because it does give us information on the wings for the 162D, which has forward swept wings. However, the version that we're building from this kit is the C, which has sort of gull wings. So we won't actually need the forward swept wings. Moving on, we install our landing gear and landing gear bay covers. It is worth noting, I think here at this point, they haven't included a part and it just says plastic. So I think we might need to add a little bit of plastic rod here just to finish that part off. A little bit frustrating, but I think with a bit of stretch sprue, it might be doable. We do have the option of installing what looks like an underwing gun pod or some sort of missile or rocket, which looks pretty fun. That should go under the wing. I'm undecided which one I will do, but I guess I'll pick closer to the time. Here we're finishing off the assembly of our landing gear by adding wheels onto it. And then we add our cockpit canopy. And then here we are just with a diagram of what the C version should look like and what the D version should look like. So you can see the D version has forward swept wings, whereas the C version has rearward swept wings. I did notice that there's no indication of a pilot figure, so a flying pose is probably unlikely, especially as there's no indication of how to raise the landing gear. I imagine with a little bit of modification it would be possible. These doors perhaps can just be glued in a closed position if they are formed to the right shape, but it's not clearly indicated in the instructions. So as far as we're concerned at the moment, there is only a wheels down on the ground kind of option. I think as well the transparent part only comes in one piece, so having the canopy open is not currently an option without making modification. And with that, let's have a look inside the bag at the bits. So we'll look quickly at the decals. I've not experienced AZ model decals before. It doesn't indicate on here who they are manufactured by, and I don't remember seeing any information on the box about them either. But looking at them right now, the film doesn't look overly thick and the printing is pretty good. The registration, which is where everything is aligned, is pretty good. Nothing seems to be off center. However, I think it is quite noticeable on the control panel and the seat belts. If you really zoomed in, which I don't think this camera can quite do, but you can kind of see the dots of the printing process. So I'm not sure that these have been silk screen printed, which other more premium brands are. I think this may have been like inkjet or laserjet printed. It's not terrible. They are probably going to be perfectly usable, and I have used sort of inkjet, laserjet printed transfers in the past. So yeah, I don't think they'll detract from how nice the kit looks at the end, but I don't think they're as quite a high quality as they can be from other companies. But it does remain to be seen how well they apply to the model. I would like to mention that on the film, if we can just get the light to sort of catch it, they do extend quite a bit around the outside of the decals. There's like excess film around the outside, so hopefully we don't get any silvering, but this will be my first experience of this brand, so we'll have to see how they go, but generally not too bad looking. And then we're met with two grey plastic sprues. We do have clear parts there in this little bag here, which got stuck to the sort of sticky bit on the bag, so we'll have a quick look at this one first. So we have two clear parts in this kit. We have the cockpit canopy, which is molded in a single piece. Plastic looks pretty good, pretty clear, no major scuffs or blemishes. There is a smaller component here which appears to be a gun sight, and the molded canopy frames are not massively proud, but they are molded to a condition where I think you would be relatively easy to mask this. The ridge around the outside here is not so proud, but the one across the center is. I think the one at the back as well. No, it's not massively, but I think if you're careful with your masking tape, you should be able to do a relatively quick job of that. So yeah, clear parts, pretty nice. Our two grey plastic sprues then. The plastic, it has a slightly grainy feel to it. Normally plastic is quite smooth when I feel it, but this is like a little bit grainy. It's has a sort of rough texture to it, which is unusual. It doesn't feel massively greasy. It has a slight greasy feel to it, but not massively so. But it might benefit from a slight wash. Any mold release on here may need to be removed. So looking at this sprue, we have our two different wing types. We've got the forward swept wings, which we don't need, but we have our sort of gull wings here. I think that's right. No, that's not right. We have different kinds of wings. Which ones did we not need? Hang on, let me look into this again. We are on this bottom sprue here. Apparently we need 10 and 11, but we don't need 10 and 11, do we? Because we actually need the ones off of this sprue. So actually, that's a slight error on the instructions. But the instructions are generic, aren't they? You can build either a D or a C. So technically we don't need 10 and 11. So just keep an eye out for that. So these are the wings for the other variants that are available from this kit. The moulding generally looks to be okay, but it's not as crisp as I have seen from other manufacturers, particularly of this age. Bearing in mind 2022, that's only 3 years ago. We do have some flash around the outside here of some parts which will need trimming away, and there is a bit of flash on actually pretty much every single part. It's got a bit of a flash or a slight mold seam to it, which is a little disappointing. We do have recessed panel lines and some raised details, but they are not as refined as I've seen from other companies. And as we progress through, so say for example here you can see we've got recessed panel lines, but they are a little bit filled in a couple of places, which I wouldn't expect to see from a new tooling. This has a slightly older feel to it. So we've got one gun pod here, another gun pod there, and our rockets. They don't look too bad. And we also have other smaller details and our pilot's chair. There is a slightly strange texture in a few places, and some of the details are a little bit filled in. So like quality wise, this has given me sort of 2000s kind of feel to it. I don't know that this is like a limited run production. I don't really have much experience with AZ models, so if you know, let me know down in the comments. The final sprue then, the second one, this has our fuselage halves on it and the wings that we actually need. Again, the plastic has a slightly grainy feel to it. It's not particularly soft, it's fairly dense and not exactly flexible. So the fuselage has recessed panel lines and some raised details as well, but again some flashes present which will need to be trimmed away. The wheels have some relatively nice molded details on them though, as do the bulkheads. We've got some rivet details and things as well. So the level of detail is fairly acceptable. It's pretty nice looking model, but it's not like as refined or potentially as easy as other kits that I've seen, particularly of this kind of era. On the inside, we've got some framework in the cockpit. Ejector pin marks are on these side of the surfaces, so that's okay. There's no ejector pin marks on the wing tops or lower surfaces, so they've done a relatively intelligent thing to try and keep ejector pin marks to a minimum, sort of out of the way so that we can't see them. But yeah, as you look through the different parts, you can see that there is some flash and there are mold seams on parts as well, which may need a little bit of work to clean up. I do hope that this model assembles into a nice representation of the aircraft, but it is giving me ever so slight like limited run vibes. The sprue gates up here, for example, they look very sort of heavy. I think they were designed to be a little bit thinner from how they look there, but they also are not thin and there's like excess plastic and flash. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, isn't it, as we look at this. Details are okay. Plastic should be fine. It does have that weird sort of texture to it. It looks like quite a nice kit, but it also doesn't feel as refined as perhaps a 2022 kit should be. But yeah, I would be keen to give this one a go and see how I get on. I think we should probably wrap this one up. We had two sort of dark grey sprues of plastic parts which are molded to a reasonable quality, but there are some flash mold seams, sort of little imperfections which may need a little bit of work to get it looking good. We had a clear part which actually looks pretty decent. The plastic is really nice on that, We had a set of decals I've not experienced from AZ model before. The printing isn't quite as refined as other companies, but they do look absolutely acceptable and usable. Assembly instructions, which are picked out in colour, which makes it much easier to follow. I don't think we'll have any issues with the assembly of the model. And we did have it all contained within this rather lovely illustrated box with our painting instructions on the rear, all printed in colour, which is really good. So there are some really good aspects of this kit, but there are some other areas which may require a little bit of attention. As we discussed, this is a 2022 tooling, so only a couple of years old. And actually, from what I can tell, since 2022, so this was sort of designed to have lots of different variations and parts. Since 2022, this has been released an awful lot of times in different boxings with different options and different paint schemes and stuff, which is why it makes me question if it is actually a limited run or if it's just something they just really want to manufacture lots of different variants of it. And perhaps some of these little bits of flash and little issues they've encountered is from that sort of mass of production that they've done to get these different variants out. Perhaps a few little bits of flash, etc., have crept in because of the amount of use that the tooling has seen in such a short amount of time. So if you did want to get one of these, you didn't have to get just this example. There are a plethora of different kinds with different paint schemes, all with different options and wings and things. So yeah, it would be fun to perhaps get a couple of these and have a display of all the different kinds of HE162s that may have existed. Naturally, as mentioned, this is pretty much a fictional aircraft that we have on the box here. Bearing all of that in mind, how much would we expect to see this retail for? Well, at the moment, what I can tell online is that you can pick up an example like this for between £10 and £15. I'm not entirely sure it is worth £15, but it could be closer to 10, depending on how much value this kit holds for you. Granted, of course, we haven't got a great number of parts, and some of the other bits and pieces I've picked up, I would prefer to pay a little bit less than that. But for having a unique and interesting looking model, perhaps it's not too expensive. But let me know down in the comments what you think of my assessment and if you agree with my comments here. And I'm always interested to know if you've got any other suggestions for kits you'd like to see me feature on my channel. As always, a quick shout out to my Model Club members for the extra support they give the channel. Massive thanks to these guys on screen. If you'd like to join them or support the channel in other ways, full information is available beneath the video. The best way to support the channel for free, though, is by subscribing with notifications turned on, so you never miss a modelling upload. Finally, though, last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.